If you guys have ever heard of the term rocket scientist, I'm going to say that. Mathematician, physicist, rocket scientist. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, she's a rocket scientist. And so rocket scientist, you kind of say, like, where does rocket scientist meet gardening? A rocket scientist meets gardener, right? Or like gifted gardener, growing life food, right? I mean, is that like not God right there for you? Like, you think if your life isn't cool enough and you want to like start growing food, right? What an amazing gift. So Wendy is going to show you guys what I could not show you how to do. I've told her stories, and she's kind of, you don't really laugh at me. You're really kind, actually, like that. But I told her stories about, and maybe I share with you guys, that we actually started a little gardening thing in our backyard in the previous house I was living in. I haven't been doing it in this house. But in the previous house I lived in, we had these big like planter boxes we built. And I thought I was so cool. I was going to build these big planter boxes, and literally all you had to do was just throw some seeds in there, right? And like water it. And so my husband makes fun of me because the only thing that really grew in this garden was he calls it a dehydrated radish. And he was being really kind. It was like probably the size of like my finger, like this. And it was very sad. It had no life to it. Let's just say there wasn't enough nutrition in that little thing. And so I threw a lot of seeds, and I actually walked around the garden every day, and I touched it, and I said, I love you to it. And I had books, and nothing really happened. And so I'm pretty embarrassed about that. And so, like I said, when I say gift, I'm not kidding when I say gift, because if it was up to me to feed my family, we would starve. And so what you're about to see from Wendy is all the things that I wish I had a Wendy to do before I did this whole endeavor. And so when I do it again, I promise it'll be better. So I think this is really going to bless you guys. And I know I'm going to be blessed, and I know the next garden's going to look much better. So anyway, you guys, round of applause. I know it was a radish for Wendy Schreier.
Thank you, Dr. Kimberly, and thank you for being here tonight. I was offered and accepted a position in the aerospace industry to test fighter jets. I am an electromagneticist, which is a specialized branch of physics, and I'm also a mathematician and a data scientist, and yes, I am a rocket scientist. So anyways, the first thing I noticed when I moved down here was, oh my goodness, the fruits and vegetables tasted horrible. I could not eat them. The acrid, burning taste. What is wrong with the food down here? How am I going to survive? So I immediately recalled growing my herbs in the bedroom. And despite living in an apartment, I started growing herbs. I threw in lettuces. I threw in some greens. Later on, I added in tomatoes and peppers. And I was on a second floor apartment. So every step had a pot with something growing in it. This is my baker's rack, which actually has show and grow lighting on it. I have this rack today. And so I grew whatever would fit on that rack. So that was while I was in my apartment. And then, oh, and by the way, I have no idea today what it's like to buy herbs, because I have like 10 more of these bags, and this is just cilantro. And I've got like, 10 more of parsley and you name it. And yet, one jar of this is like what, $5, $6? I haven't bought herbs in probably 20 plus years. So it's dirt cheap to they grow like weeds. You just throw seeds in the ground. They grow. And in 2012, I moved to Keller, and I have a tiny yard. And the worst part of a tiny yard is I have big trees. So my available growing space to sunlight is very small. So I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. I'm used to having 2 acres and a half-acre, garden and all this big space. And it's like just crushing my dreams. And I'm like, I have to be able to grow my own food because I can't eat the food down here. And in 2012, they started coming up with organic foods. But, it's like, oh, my gosh, they're so expensive. Who wants to afford all that? That's crazy. So I got to figure this out. So I decided to utilize the available growing space. So basically, that's what's kind of starting this whole small space gardening movement that I'm trying to kick off. So to get started, there are basic things that a plant needs. They need light, they need water, they need nutrients, typically from your soil. And they need air, and in particular, carbon dioxide, because they actually take in carbon dioxide and they expel oxygen. So it is pretty simple. Does everybody agree with that?
Yep.
Nothing difficult? All right, well, let's get started. Regenerative growing is a method of growing food where you're actually sequestering carbon dioxide back into the soil and you're pulling it out of the atmosphere. Because carbon does not belong in the atmosphere. It's a big problem causing climate change in the world. And they're finding out that the more that we're doing on the left here, upper left, this is your GMO, this is your McDonald's, this is your biofuels, and now they're going from 10% ethanol to 50%, actually desertifying this planet. So that is not a good way to grow food, despite the fact, there's no nutrients in that soil. It's actually dirt. It's not even soil. And they came up with a study. The study was done actually 2012. They figured out if we do nothing and continue on with what's on the left, by 2060, which is in less than 40 years, we will not have enough topsoil to support the entire population of the world. So you're looking at world famine. And if you have young children or grandchildren, it's a very bleak future if we don't start doing something. And in this bottom right corner picture, what I really like about it is, again, we have a massive soil erosion problem. And if you're growing organically, especially regeneratively, when you have water running through your soil, look how clear that water is versus on the lower right. And you notice down here in Texas, after a rainstorm, you have all the muddy rivers, everything is just ugly. Up north in Wisconsin, at least when I grew up, because everybody grew regeneratively, the waters were crystal clear after rainstorms. You didn't see any of that muddy mess. So it's really sad that, you've got all these companies that are totally against switching over to regeneratively, yet you can grow a huge amount of food in a much smaller area when you do regeneratively, which is all about putting your nutrients back in your soil. And it's nurturing the soil, taking care of the soil. And when you take care of the soil, you have healthy plants. They don't need the toxins. They don't need the pesticides. They don't need any of that. And they have a lot of nutrients, and those nutrients end up in the food, which ends up in us. So you basically are what your plants ate. So does that make sense? All right. So, you might be asking oh my gosh, I don't have acres of land. So how do I do regenerative growing in containers or beds? It's actually pretty simple. This is a pretty good diagram of how I actually set up beds and my containers at home. And when you grow this way, you need to water less. You actually have better soil fertility, and you have healthier plants. And then the thermal stability that goes on is necessary to have the microbes growing in your soil, which allows your plants to exchange. And it's a win-win for everybody. So when you don't have that thermal stability, you can't have that microbial growth. And without the microbe growth, you don't get nutrients going on. So it's all about the soil. But the main thing is in your containers, you line I shouldn't say containers, basically your beds. You line the bottoms with cardboard, and then you take some branches and sticks. It's all size dependent. And twigs. And then you top a layer off with your kitchen scraps, leaves, can be coffee grounds, banana peels, all of that. And then on top of that, you have some seasoned compost. And then I actually do a soil mix, which I'll show in the next slide.
So Wendy, it's all about a firm foundation. The foundation is so critically important.
Yes.
I mean, I can say right out of the gates, I got a big F for that one right there.
No.
But there's so many layers
yes.
to that. And it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. You're actually emulating kind of what goes on in nature.
Yeah.
Because in nature, you have branches falling, you have leaves falling, you have animals coming through, you have all this stuff that goes on, and you start building layers up.
Yeah.
And then it's decomposing because you've got all that microbes going on. And basically, 1 teaspoon of healthy soil has more population of microbes than there are people on the planet. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing what's going on in your soil. And your soil is actually a living organism. So,
Which we just finished the makeover all about
bingo.
Microbiome. And
Yes.
so you just kind of provoked me to think about like
yes.
how critically important your microbiome is. And we are what we become what we eat. We are what we eat.
Yes.
And that microbiome, that health of that microbiome is what allows you to be able to actually make your own vitamins, right?
Correct.
You in certain areas of the digestion process. So
absolutely.
This piece, I didn't want to run past that without like,
oh no,
I'm okay to throw myself under the bus because I'm going to learn from it. But I'm just observing this and I'm like, okay, that's one area for sure. But microbiome, I just think, God, like your digestive system, like that's so powerful. Yeah.
It's all connected. And what's nice about this is, you don't have to empty them out, like you would a small container every year, but you are continually growing things. You never let your soil be bare and you never let a bed be bare. And the good thing about being here in Texas, you can go through year round. So you're always growing something, and different foods provide different nutrients into the soil. So you're always thinking about, okay, the soil. And I'm not going to go into it tonight because we could be here for another week about which plants provide all these different nutrients, but I've got tons of books over here. So if you take pictures, they are laid out in these books. And we might even have a talk about that in the future if everyone's interested. Okay, so soil is the big key to everything. And the name of these layers, and I'll probably butcher the pronunciation, but it's like Hugo Coulter bed layers. And so when I do small containers, herbs don't require a really rich soil. Actually, do better in a poor soil anyways. So I call myself the imperfect gardener because I am on the lazy side. So I just use the Kellogg's potting mix for my small stuff, and it works great. And you can get all the Kellogg's are exclusively sold at Home Depot only. So, and they're not even available online. So I'm like, wow, okay. And then the compost that I absolutely love is this Living Earth organic compost. It was like the biggest secret that blew out this summer, or actually spring. I never heard of it before, and I found it at Lowe's. I took bought 1 bag and I needed like 10. Well, I've never tried it before. Broke it open and I'm like, wow, this is the best stuff on the planet. I went back the next morning and the pallets and shelves and the entire store of the next 3 Lowe's were completely cleaned out. So, and there was plenty of all kinds of compost out there, and I'm like, yeah, that secret got out.
So that Living Earth, that bag right there, the white with the blue on it, is at the top of the Hugel Coulter layer. How do you say that?
I know the Hugel
Coulter bed layers.
That would be the organic layer.
Okay.
Or the compost layer.
Okay.
And then what I do for my soil mix is I like to do, and I start it because depending upon what I'm growing, they will fluctuate, but I take about 1/3 humus, 1/3 sand, and then 1/3, I'll either do garden soil or the topsoil, depending upon which one I can find in the store, because these are both high quality items. They sell it really fast. I have not known a difference in any of my growing, whether I use the premium topsoil or the garden soil. I haven't noticed a difference at all. After I either transplant seedlings or once I've planted my seeds and they started sprouting, I will put in a layer of mulch, but I don't really use mulch. I love this raised potting bed mix from Kellogg's. And that I think is just like some of the best stuff on the planet.
Where do you get that? Where do you get that one from?
All the Kellogg's are only at Home Depot.
Okay, so all those. Okay.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty sure the Blvd's at Home Depot and Lowe's, and the all-purpose sand I've only seen at Lowe's. Now the other thing is because we are in a area, we're not in the woods, we don't have animals tromping through. We need to do soil add-ins or amendments, if you've ever heard that word before. These are personally all the amendments that I use. And biochar is a highly specialized form of carbon that plants absolutely love. You throw some biochar on roses, our roses grew 12 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, they went nuts. And I have found that chicken poo is amazing. And if you have a friend who has chickens, offer to clean their coop in exchange for the poo. And I just literally just sprinkle it around everywhere. And plants also love fish and fish fertilizer. If you ever get a whole fish and you have the guts, do not throw that away. That is gold for your plants. Plants are actually carnivores. So if you think you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you actually are our second carnivore. So, most people don't realize that. But, again, like eggshells, coffee grounds, tea leaves, kitchen scraps, no meat, no dairy, grease, oil, or bones. But, yes.
Sorry, but eggshells, does it matter if they're hard-boiled eggshells or
Not one bit. Eggshells have calcium in them, and if you want tomatoes are calcium hogs. So I set my tomatoes on an inch-thick bed of crushed up eggshells. And otherwise you don't really get big tomatoes. So, and dandelion leaves, by the way, dandelion is not a weed, and the leaves in dandelions are very high in calcium. So if you have them, be very thankful, be glad, and mix them. You can, dehydrate them or just chop them up, throw them in your garden because they are high in calcium. They're very good for your soils. So, but a lot of gardeners will do like these soil additives. Some people do it every week. Some people do it every other week. I'm lazy. I'm lucky to get it done every 2 months. So, yeah, I am not a perfect gardener, but I still bring in just buckets and buckets and buckets of food. So even you don't have to be perfect to grow a lot of food.
If you use eggshells on your tomatoes,
Yes.
will that remove some of the lectins?
I don't think so, because lectins are in the seeds and in the skin.
Okay.
They're on the skin of tomatoes. So, but I'm not a chemist either.
This is fascinating. Like, I'm just looking at all the things, and you just don't ever let anything go to waste.
No, you really don't.
Yeah, I've heard coffee, but never tea.
Oh yeah, I'm a tea drinker, so those tea leaves never go to waste. Yeah, they go right back in the ground. And again, it's all about taking care of the soil. You take care of the soil, it takes care of the plants, and take care of us. So okay, containers. Containers come in all kinds of sizes, varieties, shapes, materials. Plants are not picky. As long as they get the size that the roots need to grow in, they don't care. It's basically your own personal preference, or how much you want to charge or not be charged. In general, larger plants need larger pots to grow in. And I found that with wide leaf plants, they also need a wider pot. Since I spent quite a bit of my time growing food inside, I thought I would cover indoor spaces because not everybody has the luxury of owning a home. And being in an apartment is not an excuse. So what's really cool today is they have all kinds of hydroponic growing systems. And the one that's on the far right is actually an arrow system. I had one when I had my apartment, and it truly does work as advertised. I grew just tons and tons and tons of herbs. In fact, I ended up having 2 dehydrators. My one couldn't keep up with what was coming. So it's very easy to create a lot of herbs in a short amount of time. And that tall one on the lower right is also a hydroponic system for indoors. And but in your apartment, look around in your apartment. Do you have a wall that you can put wall-mounted containers on? It's very easy to. They have a huge amount of show and grow lights, and I have a slide coming up on that you can set up for putting up lighting systems. You're looking at stackable towers. In fact, in the next slide, I have that stackable tower. And you're looking at hanging plants. You can rig up a light to shine down on every hanging plant. And they have balcony mounted containers if you have a balcony. Take it. So you have to, look around at your space and say, hey, can I grow something here? And
Wendy, I saw something, some of the famous people were showing on Instagram, and it was these towers, this big white tower, and it had like several layers.
Yes.
And people, it was round, and they were planting, and it needed less water. Have you seen those? It kind of reminded me of this that you got going on.
That one right there,
Yeah.
It's not that it needs less water. The whole thing is like a circulating water.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's almost like an internal system.
Oh, okay.
So to me it's an okay solution
For small space.
For small space. But what I don't like about it, and I'm not a chemist, but it's like you're really not bringing in the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. You're putting it into water. What are you creating? Is it like carbonic acid or something?
Okay.
You know, that's the only thing that I kind of frown on. But it's like, hey, if that's your only option,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah, which is kind of reminds me of what we got going on here.
Right.
So.
So yeah, you know, you have to open up your imagination, and
It's very
go
cool.
for it. Yeah. Oh, I think so. I mean, I lived it for years. Now, if you live in a small yard like what I have, and my big problem is I have trees, so I even have less amount of sunlight. So my outside space is small. So again, no excuse because I can go up.
Yeah.
So you can get containers on fences. You're looking at growing vertical beds. That's actually my lettuce tower off to the lower right there. The lettuce on there is now really tall and it's just going crazy. I can't even keep up with eating it. And I've seen that pyramidal structure done in strawberries. I've seen it done in greens. I've seen it done in all kinds of things. So you're not just limited, you know, I don't like greens. We don't have to grow greens. You know, you can grow strawberries or you can put radishes in there or whatever. You know, use imagination. But again, you know, you have to realize that you can't grow a really big plant in there because they need a lot of growing space. So, but you can grow a lot of little stuff in there as well.
I know this is probably a complicated question, maybe too much for right now, but are there certain foods, like general rules of things that do well with each other and certain things that don't do well with each other?
Yeah, but I didn't go into that.
Okay, well, that would be an advanced class.
That's an
Okay,
advanced
good.
class, yes.
Good.
Again, you know, there are books written on that.
Yeah, so you know the rules. That's
Yes.
why we need your brain.
And then I love that whimsical tower. I'm actually going to create that. You know, and again, you can shepherd hooks and hanging baskets outside, and just use your imagination. So there we go, raised garden beds. Okay, I meant to bring in a slotted brick and I totally forgot it, but it's up there in the middle.
That's the one I had on the top right. I had those.
Top right. Oh,
See, I had
love
those.
those. Yes, these are just ideas of different types of garden beds. You can use your imagination, and again, work with the space you have. You know, they don't have to be square. You can make them whatever size and shape you want. But the easiest garden bed to make is with the slotted bricks. And the next couple of slides, I'm going to walk you through exactly the one I built this year or earlier this spring. And we did it so fast; it was on a whim. And I mean, it was like, hey, at noon, it's like, hey, let's make this 4x8 garden bed. And by, 8 o'clock that night, it was ready to plant. So it was crazy. But, and you don't have to use wood. The simple bricks even work. So, and then for those who have people, critter problems, you can create some type of a cage to keep them out as well. And I'm actually considering doing that. But anyways, wouldn't you love to have this backyard?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like a food paradise to me. So earlier this spring, this was completely unplanned. Peter says, hey, let's put a 4x8 bed in this spot that we just opened up in our yard. And I went, okay. So I flew off to Lowe's, I grabbed the slotted bricks, I grabbed the boards. And the first thing you do is you literally lay out your space and you just set your bricks where they are. If you need to level any ground, go for it. Plants don't honestly care. So it's up to you. And then when you get, whatever shape you want, and when you're using the slotted bricks, you will be limited to 90-degree angles. But, I'm like, okay, I can work with that. And then it's so easy. You just slide the 2x6s right into the slots. And it's like, no screws. You don't have to drag out any power tools. It cannot be any easier. And then to fill these beds up, again, the bottom layer, just a layer of cardboard. And then unfortunately, I didn't have very many branches and sticks because the weekend prior, we did our big spring cleanup, so it was already held off. So I'm like, no! So I was scrambling through the neighborhood and stealing branches and twigs from everybody that I could find. Exactly.
That's awesome.
My neighbors know me. And anyways, so that was all I could find that day. I'm like, oh well, yeah, I did the best I could. And then the next layer is the dried leaves and the kitchen scraps. And thankfully, I had juiced like crazy for the last 3 days, and I had everything in the refrigerator. So I was like, yay! And I had some fresh grass clippings, threw that all in there, and then added my compost. And in this bed, I also found an organic mushroom compost. So one half to the right is organic mushroom compost, and the other half is living earth. And right now, I can't tell the difference in anything that's growing in there. It's just a jumble. And then I added my 1/3 soil mix plus my add-ins. And then the funny thing was right about that point, my friend called me from work and said, hey, I just put in a 4x8 bed, and I used a cement mixer to mix it all up. I said, wow, that's awesome. And he goes, do you want it? And I told him where I was. He goes, oh, you want me to bring it over? I'm like, well, it's kind of late now. And about 3 hours later of mixing like crazy, I finally got it ready for planting. And the next time anybody calls you and asks if they want to, if you want to borrow their cement mixer,
Say yes.
Wow.
So
when you look at the depth of that, like, so
Too bad.
they kind of going
12
back to,
inches.
that's 1 foot.
Yes.
1 foot.
Yeah.
And you've got it stacked from obviously the ground all the way up through the atoms and the things that you've done. Just 1 foot. That's pretty.
Yeah. You can, and this is 2 bricks high, so it's 2x6, 2x6, so it's 12 inches tall, and you can grow anything in this.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's ready to roll. So next slide. Okay, so there you can see down the left, it's sprouting up, and not too long, maybe even a month later, this is where it is, and now it's taller than the fence.
Okay, are you going to talk about how you harvest this stuff? I always get nervous about when you pick it, like you pick the whole thing out.
Oh no!
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, how do you, right? Like, how do you actually, with certain things, strawberries easy, you pick, right?
Picking the strawberries.
What about lettuces and things like that?
Okay, well, I didn't go into that tonight because I'm hoping to inspire y'all to just get growing. And I thought maybe we could have another class and talk about how you harvest different
We need to make a list of all the things we know we want to do again.
Yeah. And, but yes, like lettuces, it depends on the lettuce. But for the most part, you just take a scissors, you hold it up, and go snip, 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 and leave about 1 inch on the ground, and it'll just keep growing. And the more you cut, the faster it grows. So that's why mine is now about 1 foot tall. It's crazy. I mean, it's just spilling over. I can't even keep up with it. So yeah, I mean, oh my goodness, I have to eat the garden down.
How do you keep enough air underneath it so it doesn't get any growth, bacterial growth or whatever? Like if it's not, is it aerated well? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. What's interesting is this garden is doing so well. I don't even have bugs.
Wow.
And when you take care of the soil, plants produce their own BT, which you can buy commercially, of course. But they take care of themselves. And this is, this garden, and it's not just this bed. I have other beds set up like that. I do not have bugs. When people come to my garden, they see my garden, they go, oh my gosh, you have no bugs. And I said, yeah, because I've set my soil up right. Now 10 years ago, I didn't know about that. And yeah, I was getting aphids and getting this and getting that. And a couple of weeks ago, and I'm kicking myself today, I read a really interesting article. Of course, I didn't save it. I wish it did. But it was about how if your soil is lacking certain nutrients, you get certain bugs. And they gave the example of aphids. If you have aphids, you are lacking nitrogen.
Right.
Yeah. And, I'm like, oh, that's nice to know, but I don't have any bugs. So, just clicked off of it, didn't think about, could not find that article again.
Wow.
So I'm sure the information is out there. It's just, I don't have time to dig for it, but yeah, so I really don't have that problem, but you can do pruning, like with your tomatoes when they grow. I typically prune at least 1 foot off the ground. I have no growth on my tomatoes to get some airflow. But for other plants, like eggplants, I have eggplant in here, tomatillas, okra, cabbage, radishes. I grow a lot of fruits together because they actually will ward off bugs. Like radishes do two things with bugs. They ward off bad bugs, and then they're also a bug attractant to other ones. So they'll collect on the radish leaves, and then your other stuff is fine. But in this garden bed, I've got nothing. I can't believe it. So I'm like, yay. Finally doing something right. The other thing I noticed this year, I have dozens of these little bright green lizards everywhere. I've never had that before. So I think they're just naturally eating bugs. But, at the same time, I'm hauling in, 3 sets of 5-gallon buckets of greens almost daily. And that's just out of one garden bed. So it's like, wow. and think of how much this is in groceries. If you went to buy this in a grocery store, Yep. Okay, light. What I love about this is you have no excuse because indoors especially, there are so many varieties of show and grow lights out there today. I mean, 35, 40 years ago, all we had were the little light bulbs and they worked. And now you've got stand-up towers. You can hang things from the ceiling. The sky's the limit. It's amazing. And this picture here gives an idea of all the different types. And this is just barely scratching the surface. And then you can also set up, like I have my baker's rack, lighting as well. So some things to keep in mind if you're growing a fruit, and in the botany world, whether it's a vegetable or a fruit, if it's growing in mass, like a tomato or eggplant, that is known as a fruit. And if you're growing anything that produces a mass, has to have at least 6 hours of direct sunlight outside. If you're indoors, they need 18 hours. Wow. So indoors, when in my apartment, I set mine out on a timer. So it was not difficult. And then for greens, lettuces, herbs, and then like your rooted vegetables, I found they only need about 2 hours of sunlight and they can get by with part shade the rest of the day. And that's all mine get, and they're going crazy. So let's see what else we got. Oh, and another thing to note is nightshade plants, eggplant, tomatoes, peppers. They do not do well with the Texas sun from about noon to about 5 p.m. They need to be in like diffused filtered light of some kind. So if you've got an old lace tablecloth or something, you can go there and throw them, figure something out. Or in my lawn, in my yard, this is the majority of my garden. This is morning sun. By noon, 1 o'clock is all in shade. So I naturally have that. So I don't have to run out there. Thank goodness. So yeah, I strategically looked at the sun in my yard and figured out what I can grow where. So before I really got into moving, all these pots. Because literally I can move 2 tons of dirt in a weekend.
There's a rocket science stuff.
Yeah, and then I'm like this at night. So, let's see. Okay, we covered all that. All right, next slide. Water. What I love about water, there is no one size fits all at all.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. You need to really pay attention to your plants, and it's really hard because tomatoes will look like they're just dead and shriveled up, and that's actually when they're mostly producing fruit and they're putting that energy into it. And the first thing you want to do is go out and water these guys because you think they're dying, and that can almost kill them.
Well, that's what I did.
Me too.
Yes. Me too. So what I've learned is literally I stick my thumb deep, and if that soil is dry and the plant is wilted, then I water it. So, but yeah, especially in Texas, it's crazy. And then that's a picture of a watering wand. I absolutely love that. What I don't like is they're actually watering a tomato plant wrong.
Right.
Any fuzzy leafed plant needs to be watered at the base. Don't try to get their leaves wet. They don't like it. But you know, if that's all the only way they can get water, fine. So, and then you don't have to, I'm afraid to walk over here now. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a system. If you're in an apartment, this will do. And then one of the things that I've done, and I use this, you can tell by how dirty it is I just punched a bunch of holes in the lid. And when yeah, it's just easier for me instead of dragging a 100-foot hose out, you know, every time. But when I do my transplanting, I use this guy. It just makes it easy. So I like easy. So yes, thank you. All right, now you might be going, oh my goodness, you know, what do I grow? My answer is grow what you like, because you're going to put all this time and effort into doing this. You're going to grow something you don't even want to eat. And I know people have done that. Think about go in your pantry, go in your fridge or, you know, freezer and take a look at what is it that you eat and see if you can grow some of that. So, and then also is you need to consider the available space that you have. Because if you want to grow, you know, a bunch of tomatoes, and you've only got space in your balcony for like this much, you're down to one tomato. You know, so you have to consider that kind of stuff as to what to grow. The time of year is critical down here in Texas. Yes, we can grow food year round, but you have to be careful about what you grow. And I've got a slide on that coming up. A big thing is knowing your planting zone. And the good news is most seed packets will have a diagram of your planting zone. But if you live in this area, you are in zone 8. And I wish I had known that years ago, because it would have helped. And the other thing that I found is that Texas Agricultural Extension Planting Guide. I wish I would have had that. I only learned about it this year. And it was like, all these, you know, trial and errors and experiments that I've been doing for all these years. I mean, right there. I mean, how much easier can it be? You know? But yeah, you can see that in North Texas, we are in zone 8. Okay, and then this is the planting calendar that I just absolutely love. Like I said, I wish I would have had this.
So this is a planting calendar for zone 8, since we're in zone 8.
Yes.
That's
So you look at like we're in June. So what can we plant in June? Not a whole lot, but I can tell you one thing from experience. We can plant okra right now. Okra, eggplant, yard-long beans, Malabar spinach. They all love the heat. So, and I'm not sure that any or a few, all of those are on there. This is a general guide. And Swiss chard. Swiss chard loves the heat. But yeah, this gives you an idea. And then this tells you like when to start seeds inside, when to transplant them, when to plant seeds outside. And for starting seeds inside, I really like this seed starting mix. And I've used these guys here. And you just literally fill them up with seed starting mix, wet it, and then put your seeds in there. Pay attention to your seed packets, because not every seed needs to be buried. Some of them need to be exposed to light, and they all vary. So you have to read. I know.
wow.
Yeah. And some
So
need
the
to be
seed packet that you have there, those packets will tell you how. Okay, that's good.
Yes. And then another thing that I tried this year was this greenhouse kit. And this one also makes it really easy. So you just soak the little peat pots and they'll fill up with water, poke your seeds down in there. They even give you a chart to label everything. And you put the little, it's got like a greenhouse cover on it and set it aside and it grows, it works amazing. I was like, wow. And a big thing I've learned through the years is labeling. I have not been very good about that. Your labels don't have to be, crazy expensive. I bought these at the dollar store the other day, and you can get these craft sticks just about anywhere. But yeah, I've done the whole thing where I've just thrown seeds and go, oh yeah, I remember what those are. And I've slept since then. Are those leeks? Are they garlic? Are they green onions? I don't know. So I've gotten better.
I have a question about the seeds.
Sure.
Is it like one brand that you buy, or can we buy any seeds?
I'm so glad you asked. I have an example of the seeds up here. I can't lift this up or I'll spill. But actually, I've got. Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
She read your mind.
Yeah. I try to find organic, non-GMO heirloom, particularly. Non-GMO is absolutely a must for me. And the reason I like heirloom is because they have not been hybridized. So organic, I prefer all three, but organic's actually my least one. Because when you've got the other two, you're probably going to be organic anyways. But yeah, when you can grow like wheat, 50 years ago was 6 to 8 feet tall, and now it's this tall. But when you grow heirloom food, it's the food that our grandparents ate 100 years ago. It hasn't been split. So, but yeah, these are some of the seed companies that I use, and I have more up here after people want to take pictures of what I have, for examples. And but yeah, and what's cool is the botanical interest in Renee's. Those are available. Calories carries both, and then botanical interest is at natural grocers and also at Sprouts. So these are easy to get. And then I love Rebel Gardens. They are all about totally against GMO, totally against Monsanto, and I love what they stand for. And they too are trying to get people into growing food via Rebel. I'm like, yeah, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
So. And Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company is considered the best heirloom seed company. And they are not too far from here. They're like an hour and 15 minutes from here. So, and then my girlfriend, who's an amazing gardener, and actually I inspired her, but now she's become the master. I learned from her. She really loves this, and they live like 10 minutes from my house. So,
How many seeds do you typically put in? Is it like one seed, or is it? Because I've tried looking on those before, and they don't really say specifically.
they don't. Depends on what you grow. Like I've learned cabbage, you have to put like 2 seeds together to grow cabbage. I didn't know that for years. I couldn't figure out why I wasn't making cabbage really grow. And then I read it somewhere. I'm like, oh, okay. So I tried that this year. Bam! I had cabbage growing everywhere. I'm like, who's gonna eat 12 things of cabbage? So
Phase 2 liver detoxification right there. That makes me very happy.
yeah,
Sorry,
I juice a lot. So, but yeah, take advantage of YouTube, take advantage of, resources, Google, to find that out. And the Square Foot Gardening book lays out a lot of that as well. So yeah, again, to keep this, under from growing into a month, I couldn't cover everything. So, and then I highly recommend or to consider joining some kind of a seed exchange, or maybe we could start a seed library or something. In fact, I have seeds here for y'all to take home if you'd like. So somebody's got to kick this off. So, and then the main thing about seeds is genetic variety. That's why I never go with one seed company.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm going to get one of the upcoming slides is seed saving, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's very, very important to have genetic variety. If y'all know about the cheetah population on the earth, it will go extinct. They have less than 1% of genetic variation. They are a done deal. So, yeah, and we had over 10,000 varieties of corn. We are not on the 4. So if you don't, all it would take is like, a locust thing and some kind of weird kind of weather coming through, some kind of soil parasite, and we don't have corn. Not that I would, I don't really eat corn or anything, but most of the world
still
does.
don't want to lose like what God gave us on the planet, even though it's not like they're not doing a good job with how it's being genetically modified.
Right.
And we've lost a lot of that. That's why it's really going to be up to us to try to, this is brilliant. It's up to us to protect that, for sure.
Exactly.
It is corn is on the Clean 15 this year.
Corn is on the Clean 15? Wow.
Well, remember, the Dirty Dozen is not a genetically modified. It's just the dirtiest toxins. It's not it does not talk about genetically modified at all.
Yeah. I started seed saving probably about 2015. It was something God literally put in my heart. It wasn't like, I read that and thought, what a great idea. It was like, I'm chopping up tomatoes and peppers, and normally you'd scoop that stuff and put it in a compost bin or out in the garbage. And I'm like, I wonder if I could grow these. And so I just started saving seeds, not knowing what I was doing. And now my entire house is nothing but a big seed library. It's crazy. And I have examples up here after the talk. I'll take a look. But
Did your seeds grow? Did you use them to grow stuff with them? Wow,
Yes.
so good.
The last 2 years in a row, I wasn't sure if these tomato seeds, because I love heirloom tomatoes, so I wasn't really sure if that would really work. And I wasn't following what people on Google were saying to do. You have to do all these steps to get tomato seeds, to save tomato seeds. I'm like, man, that's a lot of work, and I'm lazy, so I'm not going to do that. I just took them straight out of the tomato and planted them in the ground. And a week later, nothing. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I didn't follow the steps. Not going to work. So I threw some more seeds out in the same planter. Nothing for another week. Did it the third week.
Oh my God.
The fourth week,
You
I
had a
had like
forest.
100 plants. Yes, a forest.
Wow.
And I went, uh-oh. So here I am out there separating all these transplant
Oh my
seedlings. So I
word.
had like 100 tomatoes. I did that last year and again this year. I didn't even learn from my mistake.
Wow.
So yeah, they really do work. And so what I actually, after that fiasco with that planter, then I got some of these guys and I planted one seed in each, and every one of them produced a plant.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it really does
Where
work.
did you get your heirloom tomatoes?
I was either I think Natural Grocers. Yeah. I only shop at either Natural Grocers or the organic section of Sprouts or the organic section of Central Market. I'm really picky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I put my foot down in 2015 that I will not buy GMO or conventionally grown
Yes.
food.
Amen.
Amen.
That's good right
Yes.
Yeah,
Somebody told my
I'm done with that. So when you do your seeds, I just spread them out on paper towels and let them dry at least a week, and then I just collect them into simple envelopes and just put them in envelopes.
Simple. How long are they good for?
Depends on the seed. As long as you keep them in a cool, dry place. They had seeds that they dug out of the tombs in Egypt that were over 4,000 years old and were still viable. But I mean, I found seeds that were from my apartment back in 2012, and I planted them, and they were still growing.
That's awesome.
So as long as they're not exposed to a lot of heat, humidity is a big deal. So they need to be in a cool, dry place. So I collect, when you get those, all your supplements, every one of these has at least
that's
one
a good
in
idea.
it.
This is
Yeah, little
that's
desiccant. Yeah.
I throw those away. I'm gonna start keeping them now.
So do you save those and put them in your seed envelopes?
I do.
Brilliant.
She's a rocket scientist.
She is so practical.
I thought about it, and I thought, well, maybe they don't last very long. Like once you've opened it, like hit oxygen, it doesn't work.
So pollinators. If we do not have pollinators, we don't have
That's very
food.
important.
And there's a problem with the honeybee population. Actually, the bee population. It's not even honeybees; it's bees in general. And the butterfly population they're our biggest pollinators. They are literally being killed off at an unsustainable rate. So it's kind of scary.
Killed by.
Mostly GMOs. They found that bees do not return to their hives after being exposed to GMO fields. So, yeah. And they also found out that the hives are not kept warm when bees are fed onto GMO plants. So now they're trying to figure out, well, why is that happening? And I'm like, well, why don't you just stop the GMOs?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a documentary I watched called The Vanishing of the Bees. It was terrifying. And ever since I watched that movie, I'm like, okay, what do we do to help the pollinators? Because starving to death just does not sound like fun. So one of the things that I have done, this is a small example, I have here one at home, but I've literally created bee waterers. And you just take a tray, put rocks in it, fill it with water, set them out in your yard. I have one in every corner of the house. And bees do not swim, they drown very easily. So they need something to climb onto so they can dry and fly off. So such a simple solution, And then I also have those critter homes hanging around. And then I put out stuff to feed the butterflies. Again, Pinterest has got hundreds of ideas. And there's another example. You don't have to have ugly bee waters. You can make them pretty too. And then I love botanical interests because they actually have Pollinator and Save the Bees flower mixes, and so do other companies as well. I have some examples over here. So I grow flowers in with all of my vegetables on purpose to attract pollinators as well. So
How do you prevent mosquitoes from laying their eggs?
I have mosquito plants everywhere. They actually are citronella plants, and they're okay. But the thing is, in Texas, it gets so hot. I feel like in the morning, by afternoon, it's bone dry.
Yeah.
So I have not had a problem with mosquitoes breeding in this, but yeah, we still have mosquitoes around. But the citronella plants have toned it down. They're still around.
Depends on your body type too. Mosquitoes, they
When I-
eat her alive.
When I grew up, they never came near me. I moved to Texas, and I'm like a magnet now.
Mosquito candy.
So, anyways, that was my presentation. So, are y'all excited? To get learning now?
So I one of the things Wendy and I have been discussing is just trying to figure out, like, how do we get all of y'all to get involved? Obviously, I wasn't going to teach you because you would have a dehydrated radish. And so I'm like, we're just trying to figure out, like, what would be next? Like, what would you guys like to see? If anybody has anything that they think of right now, like, we would love to hear any questions. And also, I think a way, like, initially where we can keep connected is share some ideas or questions on Herb Family Friends. Are you all on the Facebook page, Herb Family Friends? If you are not, just go to the Facebook page, Herb Family Friends. It is a private group. It's just for our patients. And so we only have our group in there. And that's a great place to share ideas, share, like, here's what I did, and ask questions. And Wendy's on there. Wendy shares regularly recipes, food that she cooks. It looks amazing. It makes me hungry every time I see it. And one of the things I was thinking of is one of the slides that you have on there where it talked about the zone. I thought that would be a really good share, for us to be, just kind of have it in a place where we can know, because at Herb Family Friends on the private Facebook page, you can always go back. You can go back for a couple years and you can see, right, recipes, testimonials, desserts that she's made, things like that. You can go back and share. And so I really want to encourage everybody to do that. But we're thinking of a co-op. We're thinking of, like, seed saving. We're thinking of all kinds of things that we want to make sure to do. So was this helpful? Like, do you guys, does it feel like something that you can feel empowered to start?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're probably thinking, I got this house, I got this property, I'm like, right? But some of us have small space. Like, I don't have a huge backyard. I couldn't fit those planter boxes in the home that I'm in right now, but I can fit a couple of those. I can grow up, right? I can do up, and I kind of think I need to redeem myself with tomatoes and a few things, So for me, I feel like I need a little encouragement. I think I would just pick a couple things that I know I'd eat all the time. And tomatoes would be a good one. The radishes, we'll wait till later. Cilantro and tomatoes would be the two things I think I would start with. So maybe, like you said, like, picking the thing that like, if it goes crazy, like, pick that, because you could eat a whole lot of that. Does anybody else have any questions or any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Like I've gardened the last 2 previous years and did okay.
Congratulations.
But thank you. But the freaking grasshoppers take them out by the end of, like, July or August, and they just eat everything. What is a good deterrent? No.
I mean, is it hot peppers for those guys?
I know,
too?
right?
Right. I thought about boiling them and putting that with hot peppers and garlic and bowl in it, and then creating, like, a thing that I spray.
You can try
So
it.
if you try it, you have to share it on Herb Family Friends so that we can all know.
On Facebook, there is a group called Ask Us Anything, North Texas Gardeners. It's a private group.
Okay.
Join it.
And are they all about heirloom and organic and non-GMO?
And learning from each other.
Okay, good. Ask us anything.
Ask Us Anything, North Texas Gardeners.
Okay.
You have to be in North Texas to even be able to join.
Okay.
Yeah, and they are very restrictive about what you can
Rebecca Gates,
you know,
can
post.
you write that down so we can post it on Urban Friends?
Yeah,
think
I learned a
it's
lot
smart.
from them,
Okay.
which really surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it sounds like you inspired your best friend, and then your best friend's now like going.
she's
crazy with
really gone crazy. She joined that group and learned so much from them, and so now she's teaching me. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. She's like,
And so-
you need to join the group, so I did.
That's what we want these guys to do, right? To go home and to do that.
Just
so
get
we can help
started.
each other.
Do something.
Yeah,
Do
just
Yeah,
start.
just
one
do
thing.
something.
Plant
Yes.
a tomato.
Wendy, how are you? What kind of hot are you going to put that sweet potato? That's
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
yeah,
wondering
that
about
was
the
good.
sweet potato.
Okay. I wanted to. I meant to say
Sweet
that.
potato and
Practical.
garlic.
That's something.
Yes. Okay.
Most of
you
us
don't
would throw that away.
Oh no.
No.
Oh.
you don't throw it
Oh my
away.
God, you didn't eat that.
I eat it.
I meant to say, not everything has to be grown from seed. If you are in a store and you find an organic, and I'm going to assume everybody's buying organic here,
Yeah.
and you see something that's starting to sprout like this, buy it because this is free food. And some people do that. And what I do on this is I'll cut off the end where it's all sprouting, like I have here. And then I literally will put this in water for a couple of days. And then I will carefully take a knife and I will cut every one of these. These are called slips, by the way. And I will cut every one of those out. And literally, for potato size, I would say 14, 16 inches. So I forget who asked that question.
I did.
Okay. And for growing sweet potatoes, you're going to put them about at least halfway down and cover them with dirt as the plant is growing. So, and it takes.
Okay, what if you didn't cut the slips out? You have to just go in there later with them growing. And
Well, that too, but the thing is each one of these slips will create a whole sweet potato. Otherwise, this will only just create one.
Whoa.
So I've got, what?
You have
I
to
mean,
separate them.
you just carefully separate them with a knife. It's
No, when you
nothing
plant 'em.
difficult. Yeah, and then when you plant them, you plant them at, I'll put like 4 layers and then I'll cover up and plant some more or do a couple of pots. These guys, I'll do a couple of pots because I have so many. But I mean, this is free food, guys. And then,
The next question. How do you keep celery growing?
oh, awesome question. Okay.
How do you keep celery growing? That's
Oh,
what she's asking.
Okay, when I go to a grocery store and I'm buying celery, I examine the bottom and I'm looking for any kind of fresh little new growths on there or any kind of roots that are still sticking on there. And it's like, yes.
I can get it started really well. It's just that when it's time to plant them in the dirt is where
Oh, okay. I cut the end off I probably about 2 inches from the end. So I've got little bitty either root hairs or little bitty fresh growths on them. And then I stick that in literally a thing of water and I let that in the water about a week. I'll usually have a bunch of sprouts by the end of the week.
Wow.
And then now celery will grow a large root. So it needs to be in a larger container. And then I'll plant that down so that just the little shoots are barely sticking up. And it doesn't take long and you've got celery growing. So I almost don't have to buy celery anymore. So, and what's cool about celery is you can just take off pieces as you need them and they just keep growing. So, and until you pull that big root out, which by the way is edible.
Yeah.
And it's delicious. But yeah, until you pull that big root out, that celery will keep growing. So it's like, wow, and then garlic, again, I found this in the store and I just jumped for joy. No, he's a different one because this guy got planted. Okay. But if you see a sprouted garlic in the store, buy it. Because this is, again, you buy one bulb.
I'm embarrassed with what I do.
And then, you just take it home and you break them apart. And then each one of these pieces goes in the ground. I go about thumb deep with garlic, cover it with dirt, come back about 9 months later, and you'll have garlic bulbs.
So with those sprouts,
Yeah.
that piece.
Each one of those will become its own garlic bulb.
We'll release you guys. Bless you. And I hope this was really helpful for you. So.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.